more time again, very loudly. Krishna, Krishna. I can hear you at the back. A little louder. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances of Glashishwara Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to our morning Bhagavatam class. This morning we will be continuing with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 10, verse 29 and 30. And the chapter is entitled The Departure of Lord Krishna to Dwarka. And we're very happy to have His Grace Gopika Radhika Mataji from Mayapur. Hare Krishna Mataji, accept my obeisances. All grace to Prabhupada, all grace to Candramauli Swami. And it is all
Hare
yours.
Krishna Mataji. Thank you. May I share the screen?
Yes, if I can learn how to do that, that would be great, right?
Okay.
That shows how under IT savvy I am. I'm trying to see how to do this. Srimati.
You can make co-host, Mataji. Make a
Okay,
Gopika
got it.
Radhika Mataji co-host.
I told you I need help with this. There we go. I made you co-host.
Okay, it says this will stop other screen share. Okay. Now this is, I'm sorry, just a second.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay, here. Okay, so we'll be doing two verses today. Srimad Bhagavatam 1:10:29 and 1:10:30. Ya virya shulkena hrita swayamvare pramatya chaidya pramukhan hi shushminaha pradyumna sambam vasutadayo para yascha hrita bhaumavadhe sahasrashah. Translation. The children of these ladies are Pradyumna, Samba, Amba, etc. Ladies like Rukmini, Satyabhama, and Jambavati were forcibly taken away by him from their Swayamvara ceremonies after he defeated many powerful kings headed by Shishupal. And other ladies were also forcibly taken away by him after he killed Bhaumasur and thousands of his assistants. All of these ladies are glorious. Purport. Prabhupada writes, exceptionally qualified daughters of powerful kings were allowed to make a choice of their own bridegrooms in open competition, and such ceremonies were called Swayamvara, or selection of the bridegroom. Because the Swayamvara was an open competition between the rival and valiant princes, such princes were invited by the father of the princess, and usually there were regular fights between the invited princely order in a sporting spirit. But it so happened that sometimes the belligerent princes were killed in such marriage fighting, and the victorious prince was offered the trophy princess for whom so many princes died. Rukmini, the principal queen of Lord Krishna, was the daughter of the king of Vidarbha, who wished that his qualified and beautiful daughter be given away to Lord Krishna. But her eldest brother wanted her to be given away to King Shishupal, who happened to be a cousin of Krishna. So there was open competition, and as usual, Lord Krishna emerged successful after harassing Shishupal and other princes by his unrivaled prowess. Full description of this beautiful booty of Lord Krishna will be given in the 10th canto. There were 16,100 beautiful girls who were daughters of many kings and were forcibly stolen by Bhaumasur, who kept them captive for his carnal desire. These girls prayed piteously to Lord Krishna for their deliverance, and the merciful Lord, called by their fervent prayer, released them all by fighting and killing Bhaumasur. All these captive princesses were then accepted by the Lord as his wives, although in the estimation of society, they were all fallen girls. The all-powerful Lord Krishna accepted the humble prayers of these girls and married them with the adoration of queens. So altogether, Lord Krishna had 16,108 queens at Dwarka, and in each of them, he begot 10 children. All these children grew up, and each had as many children as the father. The aggregate of the family numbered in the millions. Then the next verse. Eta param stri tvamapastapeshalam nirasta shaucham vata sadhu kurvate yasam grihat pushkaralochanah patir na jatva paitya hritibhir hridisprishan. Translation: all these women auspiciously glorified their lives, despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. Purport: the devotees of the Lord are purified souls. As soon as the devotees surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord sincerely, the Lord accepts them, and thus the devotees at once become free from all material contaminations. Such devotees are above the three modes of material nature. There is no bodily disqualification of a devotee, just as there is no qualitative difference between the Ganges water and the filthy drain water when they are amalgamated. Women, merchants, and laborers are not very intelligent, and thus it is very difficult for them to understand the science of God or to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. They are more materialistic, and less than them are the Kiratas, Hunas, Andhras, Pulindas, Pulkashas, Abhiras, Kankas, Yavanas, Khasas, etc. But all of them can be delivered if they are properly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. By engagement in the service of the Lord, the designative disqualifications are removed, and as pure souls, they become eligible to enter into the kingdom of God. The fallen girls, under the clutches of Bhaumasur, sincerely prayed to Lord Sri Krishna for their deliverance, and their sincerity of purpose made them at once pure by virtue of devotion. The Lord therefore accepted them as his wives, and thus their lives became glorified. Such auspicious glorification was still more glorified when the Lord played with them as the most devoted husband. The Lord used to live with his 16,108 wives constantly. He expanded himself into 16,108 plenary portions, and each and every one of them was the Lord himself without deviation from the original personality. The Shruti mantra affirms that the Lord can expand himself into many. As the husband of so many wives, he pleased them all with presentations, even at a costly endeavor. He brought the Parijat plant from heaven and implanted it at the palace of Satyabhama, one of the principal queens. If therefore anyone desires the Lord to become one's husband, the Lord fulfills such desires in full. Om Agyantimirandhasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamne Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanama Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So just reading the translations once more. The children of these ladies are Pradyumna, Samba, Amba, etc. Ladies like Rukmini, Satyabhama, and Jambavati were forcibly taken away by him from their Swayamvar ceremonies after he defeated many powerful kings headed by Shishupal, and other ladies were also forcibly taken away by him after he killed Bhaumasur and thousands of his assistants. All of these ladies are glorious. And the next verse, all these women auspiciously glorified their lives despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. So I'll switch to my PowerPoint over here. So I thought to discuss these two verses under these broad headings. One is the Kshatriya spirit and traditions, then Bhakta Vatsalya, Krishna's greatest quality, then how no material qualification is required to become eligible for receiving Krishna's mercy, then 16,108 queens, is that an exaggeration? Sounds mind-boggling. And Krishna, the best master, friend, son, husband, and lover. So one thing that we get from these verses is a very interesting glimpse into the sociological and cultural aspect of the Vedic civilization in terms of Varnashram Dharma, and specifically what the Kshatriya Dharma and Kshatriya Varna was like, the Kshatriya spirit and traditions. So as we see, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, Yadrichaya Chopapannam Swargadvaram Apavritam Sukhina Kshatriya Partha Labhante Yuddhamidrisham. That, O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. So this point is being made here. We get it from the description of the Kshatriya way of marriage and Swayamvar, how this attitude of fighting, dharmic fighting, was just so deeply ingrained in the Kshatriyas, and it was like their sporting spirit. The Kshatriyas loved to fight. It was their dharma as well as their sport, and that was basically intertwined in all the activities of their lives. And so here's another excerpt from Bhagavatam 1:16-10, Prabhupada's purport, where Prabhupada writes, Maharaj Parikshit, this is when Maharaj Parikshit came to know that there were some parts of his kingdom where Kali had started infiltrating. And so Prabhupada writes that when he heard that some people of the state had already taken to those symptoms, the symptoms of Kali Yuga, he wanted to take immediate steps against such causes of unrest. This means that at least up to the regime of Maharaj Parikshit, such symptoms of public life, the Kali Yuga symptoms, were practically unknown. And as soon as they were slightly detected, he wanted to root them out. And then Prabhupada goes on to say that the news was not palatable for Maharaj Parikshit, but in a way it was, because Maharaj Parikshit got a chance to fight. So again, this Kshatriya spirit. There was no need to fight with small states because everyone was peacefully under his subordination. But the Kali Yuga miscreants gave his fighting spirit a chance for exhibition. A perfect Kshatriya king is always jubilant as soon as he gets a chance to fight, just as a sportsman is eager when there is a chance for a sporting match. So yeah, very interesting glimpse of the sociological structure in Vedic civilization and how the Kshatriyas operated, their activity as well as their mindset, mentality, just their intrinsic nature and temperament. Here we get another instance. This is when Dhruv Maharaj in the 4th canto, he is fighting the Yakshas. And it's mentioned that when the heroes of the Yakshas saw that all their heads were being thus threatened by Dhruv Maharaj, they could very easily understand their awkward position, and they concluded that they would certainly be defeated. But as heroes, they lauded the action of Dhruva. So even though they are getting defeated by Dhruv Maharaj and they are on the losing side, but it's just the Kshatriya spirit that it's just so dharmic and so valorous, so chivalrous, that you can't help admire even an enemy if that enemy is putting up a really courageous and valorous show of power and fighting. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that the spirit of fighting in a sporting attitude is very significant in this verse. The Yakshas were severely attacked, Dhruv Maharaj was their enemy, but still, upon witnessing the wonderful heroic acts of Maharaj Dhruva, they were very pleased with him. This straightforward appreciation of an enemy's prowess is a characteristic of real Kshatriya spirit. So very unlike the kind of war games that go on in today's society. Another one, where this is Prabhupada's lecture in Tokyo. Prabhupada says, when Krishna was fighting with Rukmini's brother, he lost his chariot, Rukmini's brother, that is. So, and Rukmini took the sword. So Krishna also threw his bow and arrows. He also took the sword. Not that I shall possess better weapons to kill you. No, equal terms. If you have no sword, I'll give you a sword. Yes, take this sword and I take another. This is Kshatriya spirit, sporting. And so this same thing is reflected in their marriage traditions as well, as described in today's verses and purports. The Swayamvar ceremony that used to happen among the Kshatriyas, Kshatriya families. So fighting was an intrinsic part of that. And Prabhupada, this is from Bhagavatam 1:16, 26 to 30, purport. Prabhupada elaborates on this. Similarly, when here Prabhupada is talking of Krishna, when he was playing the part of a Kshatriya as the son of Maharaj Vasudev, he displayed all the skill of a martially spirited Kshatriya. In almost all cases, the Kshatriya king had to secure a wife by fighting or kidnapping. This sort of behavior for a Kshatriya is praiseworthy in the sense that a Kshatriya must show his power of chivalry to his would-be wife, so that the daughter of a Kshatriya can see the valor of her would-be husband. So that was basically the logic behind this tradition of fighting in Swayamvar. The Kshatriya would demonstrate his power, his valor to his would-be wife. And even the personality of Godhead, Sri Ram, Prabhupada says, displayed such a spirit of chivalry during his marriage. He broke the strongest bow called Haradhanu and achieved the hand of Sita Devi, the mother of all opulence. The Kshatriya spirit is displayed during marriage festivals, and there is nothing wrong in such fighting. Lord Sri Krishna discharged such responsibility fully, because although he had more than 16,000 wives, in each and every case, he fought like a chivalrous Kshatriya and thus secured a wife. To fight 16,000 times to secure 16,000 wives is certainly possible only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, he displayed full responsibility in every action of his different transcendental pastimes. So in the 10th canto, of course, we get a more elaborate description of how Krishna marries each of his 16,108 queens. So 8 principal queens, and then 16,100 queens, who were the princesses who, as Prabhupada writes here, they were kidnapped by Bhaumasura and kept under his captivity. And so in the 10th canto, there is a chapter where Draupadi is asking all of Krishna's queens to describe how Krishna married each of them. And so there we get a really detailed description of how Krishna exactly married each of these queens. And yeah, there is description of similar kinds of Swayamvar ceremonies in many of those cases. Some excerpts from Prabhupada's lectures. This kidnapping was allowed among the Kshatriyas, and fight, that is Kshatriya marriage. Unless there is fight, that marriage is not complete. The red vermilion, which we apply, that is Kshatriya principle. After killing the opposite party, the blood will be smeared over the head of the bridegroom, over the bride, hair of the bride. That is conquer, victory. Another excerpt, because a Kshatriya family, it is to be understood that they must go on fighting, even in their marriage. There would be fighting. Without fighting, no marriage takes place in Kshatriya family. Krishna had 16,108 wives, and almost in each time he had to fight to gain the wife. It was a sporting. For a Kshatriya to fight, it was a sporting. Just like for the Brahmanas, their sport was Shastrartha, to debate on the basis of Shastra. And for the Kshatriyas, this was their dharma and their sport. This was their enjoyment. This was what enthused them and gave them and pumped them up, their sense of chivalry as exhibited during a dharmic fight. So this is one, I just thought to discuss this briefly because there's an interesting sociological aspect that comes through in these verses of the Vedic civilization and culture. And then moving on to Bhakta Vatsalya, Krishna's greatest quality. So through this, we get a glimpse of Krishna's greatest quality of Bhakta Vatsalya, because as Prabhupada writes here, that about the girls captured by Bhaumasura, that they prayed piteously to Lord Krishna for their deliverance, and the Lord, called by their fervent prayer, released them all by fighting and killing Bhaumasura. And then Prabhupada makes this point that why it is specifically noteworthy is because all these captive princesses were accepted by the Lord as his wives, although in the estimation of society, they were all fallen girls. But the all-powerful Lord Krishna accepted the humble prayers of these girls and married them with the adoration of queens. Again, in the next verse also, because it says here, Nirasta Shaucham, without purity, the fallen girls under the clutches of Bhaumasura sincerely prayed to Lord Sri Krishna for their deliverance, and their sincerity of purpose made them at once pure by virtue of devotion. So another sociological aspect that comes through here in terms of why it is being described as being without purity, Nirasta Shaucham, and why Krishna's act is extra merciful in this context is because there was this very strict principle in the society at that time that if a girl gets touched by another man or gets owned by another man, then no one would accept her as his wife. And here Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the supermost human being, the supermost person, he accepts all of them as his own queens. So in this regard, there is this instance from the Mahabharata, which many of us might be familiar with, the story of Shikhandi and his previous life, which is again a demonstration of the same principle at play where I'm reading this from Krishna Dharma Prabhu's translation of the Mahabharata, where this is Bhishma Dev describing that incident. He says that as Vichitravirya came of age, so I here is Bhishma Dev, so I thought it time to find him a wife. I heard that the king of Kashi had arranged a swayamvar for his 3 daughters, Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. I decided to ride into Kashi on my chariot, prepared for battle. Kings and princes had assembled at the swayamvar from all over the world, all hoping one of the girls would choose to marry them. Upon seeing this, I remembered that the wise approve of many kinds of marriage, but for a Kshatriya, the best is when the bride is snatched from an assembly of warriors after defeating them in a fight. Again, the same thing that we saw in these verses. So I then announced to the kings that I had decided to carry away all 3 princesses for my younger brother. So Vichitravirya was the younger brother of Bhishma Dev. And Bhishma Dev challenged them to prevent him if they could. And then he says, I took all 3 maidens onto my chariot and sped away. And then there is a description of how all the kings and princes who had gathered there, they follow Bhishma Dev in hot pursuit, and there emerges a raging battle, and Bhishma Dev defeats all of them. But Shalva, one of those princes, he continues to chase Bhishma Dev. He was determined to win the hand of one of the maidens. And he rushed after me, shouting, stay, stay. Provoked, I faced him. A furious but short-lived battle ensued. I soon overpowered Shalv and destroyed his chariot, although I decided not to kill him. I then returned to Hastinapur with the 3 maidens. But then this thing happens that when he arrives in Hastinapur, the eldest princess, Amba, approached Bhishma Dev and she said, I had already chosen Shalva as my husband. He too accepted me in his heart, and my father agreed to the match. I would have chosen him in the Swayamvar, but you kidnapped me and I did not have the opportunity. O knower of virtue, tell me what I should now do. So this was a fix over here because they had already committed themselves to each other, but now Amba gets kidnapped by Bhishma Dev for Vichitravirya, his younger brother. So Bhishma Dev asks her to wait while he discussed the matter with the Brahmins. It was concluded that Amba should be, Amba should be allowed to go to Shalva's city and offer herself to him. We gave her an escort of priests and maidservants and sent her to Shalva. But then this gets interesting. When Shalva sees her, however, he said, O lady of fair complexion, I no longer desire to accept you as my wife, for you have already been taken by another. You were led away cheerfully by Bhishma before all the other kings. How can I, who must lay down the law for others, now accept you? You have been touched by another. According to holy books, I cannot accept you as my wife. Amba tried to change Shalva's mind, pleading that she had not been happy to be kidnapped. She had gone to Shalva at the first opportunity, but the king was adamant. He would not accept her. He told the disappointed princess to return to Hastinapur. So another glimpse of the sociological principles, the Kshatriya principles in Vedic society at that time, that, yeah, this was very strictly followed. And therefore, this gives us even greater appreciation of Krishna's merciful act. That Krishna, like we see Lord Ram, one of his purposes in his descent was to be a Maryada Purushottam, to lay down the law for mankind and to demonstrate perfect human conduct. But in the case of Swayam Bhagavan Krishna, for Krishna, he always made it very clear that his supermost quality, his greatest quality was Bhakta Vatsalya. For him, that was the consideration that overrode all other considerations, all other rules of moralities, social norms, ethics, everything was set aside. He is God, everything that he does is beyond reproach. And for him, he always made it clear that the first priority is to give shelter to one who seeks shelter under his lotus feet. And therefore, although he's the supreme personality of Godhead, and even though this was a situation where even an ordinary Kshatriya prince would not have accepted these princesses, but Krishna, despite being the supreme personality of Godhead, he very willingly accepts all of them due to their devotion and their surrender and taking shelter of Krishna with sincerity. Oops, sorry. So we get many other instances of the same thing where Krishna breaks apparent moral principles, religious principles, sociological principles in order to save his devotee or keep his devotee's words. So this is from Bhagavatam 1:937, where Krishna takes up weapons on the battle of Kurukshetra, even though he had taken a solemn vow that he would not take up any weapon, but he takes up his weapons for the sake of two devotees, to protect Arjun's life and to keep Bhishma Dev's words. So both of them were devotees, and to keep both of their honor and respect, he takes up weapons contrary to his own vow. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, this is the translation. Bhishma Dev is recalling on his deathbed, fulfilling my vow and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. And Prabhupada describes the story behind this incident in the purport, that the Battle of Kurukshetra was fought on military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit, again, the Kshatriya sporting spirit, as a friend fights with another friend. Duryodhan criticized Bhishma Dev, alleging that he was reluctant to kill Arjun because of paternal affection. A Kshatriya cannot tolerate insults on the principle of fighting. Bhishma Dev therefore promised that the next day he would kill all 5 Pandavas with special weapons made for the purpose. Duryodhan was satisfied and he kept the arrows with him to be delivered the next day during the fight. By tricks, Arjun took the arrows from Duryodhan, and Bhishma Dev could understand that this was the trick of Lord Krishna. So he took a vow that the next day Krishna would have to take up weapons himself or his friend Arjuna would die. So catch-22 situation, both of them are devotees. Arjuna is a devotee, Bhishma Dev is a devotee. And now Krishna is in this situation. Either he has to keep Bhishma Dev's words or his friend Arjun will die. And so for Krishna, the choice is easy. In the next day's fighting, Bhishma Dev fought so violently that both Arjun and Krishna were in trouble. Arjun was almost defeated. The situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhishma Dev the very next moment. At that time, Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhishma by keeping Bhishma's promise, which was more important than his own. Thus, seemingly, he broke his own promise. He had promised before the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjun, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhishma Dev in an angry mood, as a lion goes to kill an elephant. The Almighty Personality of Godhead. Sorry, Yeah, of course, there was no possibility of Arjun's death because the Lord himself was on the chariot. But because Bhishma Dev wanted to see Lord Krishna take up some weapon to save his friend, the Lord created the situation, making Arjuna's death appear imminent. He stood before Bhishma Dev to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he had taken up the wheel. So yeah, this is the foremost consideration for Krishna, to protect his devotee, to keep his devotee's words. That is why in the Gita, Krishna says to Arjun that you declare that my devotee will never perish. Kaunteya pratijanihi na me bhakta pranashyati. Because for Krishna, it's like if he says something, then it may be subject to modification depending upon the needs of his devotees. But if his devotee declares something, then that will be upheld at all costs, because Krishna will not compromise in keeping the honor of his devotee, in keeping the words of his devotee. So he asks Arjun to declare that my devotee will never perish. If Arjun declares that, then it is rock solid truth. Another instance, the Almighty Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, having observed that a great danger was facing his unalloyed devotees who were fully surrendered souls, at once took up his Sudarshan disc to protect them. This is when Ashwathama releases the Brahmastra to kill Parikshit Maharaj. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, Ashwathama released the weapon just to finish all the male members of Pandu's family. Therefore, in one sense, it was more dangerous than the atomic bombs because it could penetrate even the most protected place and would never miss the target. Knowing all this, Lord Sri Krishna at once took up his personal weapon to protect his devotees who did not know anyone other than Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has clearly promised that his devotees are never to be vanquished. And he behaves according to the quality of the degree of devotional service rendered by the devotees. Here, the word Ananya Vishyatatmanam is significant. The Pandavas were 100% dependent on the protection of the Lord, although they were all great warriors themselves. But the Lord neglects even the greatest warriors and also vanquishes them in no time. When the Lord saw that there was no time for the Pandavas to counteract the Brahmastra of Ashwathama, he took up his weapon, even at the risk of breaking his own vow. Although the battle of Kurukshetra was almost finished, still, according to his vow, he should not have taken up his own weapon. But the emergency was more important than the vow. And then Prabhupada goes on to write, he is better known as the Bhakta Vatsala, or the lover of his devotee. And thus he preferred to continue as Bhakta Vatsala than to be a worldly moralist who never breaks his solemn vow. So Krishna's priorities are very clear. He preferred to continue as Bhakta Vatsala than to be a worldly moralist. For him, what matters is his devotees and protecting them and keeping their words and ensuring their safety and welfare. And so the same principle is reflected here with Krishna accepting all the princesses captured by Bhaumasura, even though they were fallen in the eyes of the society. But for Krishna, all that mattered was that they were his devotees. They had taken shelter of him. And so Krishna unreservedly accepted them. Okay, I'm sorry, my screen keeps freezing a bit. Yeah. And we see this very beautifully reflected in Krishna's own words in the 9th canto, where Krishna says, Sadhavo hridayam mahyam, sadhunam hridayam tvaham, madanya te na jananti, naham tebhyo managati. The pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of the pure devotee. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know anyone else but them. So most endearing and also most heartening quality of Krishna for us, because it gives so much encouragement and hope and solace and reassurance as devotees that yes, if one takes shelter of Krishna, then as Krishna says, his devotee will never perish. Krishna will protect his devotees at all costs. And the natural point leading from this previous point is that no material qualification is required to become eligible for receiving Krishna's mercy. For Krishna, all that is required is that one takes shelter of him and appeals to him with devotion. So there's a very beautiful verse from the Padyavali where it is stated, where was the hunter Dharma's piety, Dhruva's maturity, and Gajendra's knowledge? Where was Kubja's beauty? Where was Sudama's wealth? Where was Vidura's noble birth? Where was Ugrasena's chivalrous strength? Lord Madhava is pleased only by devotional service and not by material qualifications. So the same principle reflected here, even though They did not have material qualifications as such, but their qualification was, as Prabhupada says, their sincerity of purpose made them at once pure by virtue of devotion. Then another verse, this is from the 11th canto, Uddhav Gita. Krishna is speaking to Uddhav, saying that in every yoga, many living entities entangled in the modes of passion and ignorance gain the association of my devotees. Thus, such living entities as the Daityas, Rakshasas, birds, beasts, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Nagas, Siddhas, Charanas, Guhyakas, and Vidyadharas, as well as such lower class human beings as the Vaishyas, Shudras, women, and others, were able to achieve my supreme abode. Vritrasur, Prahlad Maharaj, and others like them also achieved my abode by association with my devotees, as did personalities such as Vrishaparva, Bali Maharaj, Banasur, Maya, Vibhishan, Sugriv, Hanuman, Jambavan, Gajendra, Jatayu, Tuladhar, Dharmavyad, Kubja, the gopis in Vrindavan, and the wives of the Brahmanas who were performing sacrifice. So we can see the wide spectrum, the wide range of people that have taken shelter of Krishna and qualified as Krishna's recognized devotees. It ranges from literally people from all sorts of species. There's Gajendra, an elephant, Sugriv, Hanuman, Jambavan, they're monkeys, Vanaras. Krishna says birds, beasts. There was Jatayu, Krishna's bird devotee. Then Bali Maharaj, Banasur, Prahlad Maharaj, they were born in Daitya families. Nagas, Dharmavyad was a hunter. Kubja, she was a society girl, and the gopis in Vrindavan. So we see the whole range of people. Everyone is accepted by Krishna. The only qualification is that one takes shelter of Krishna. The opportunity is equally available to everyone. And we see the same. This was, of course, very much the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and therefore the mode of Srila Prabhupada and our movement as a whole. Translation: in distributing love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates did not consider who was a fit candidate and who was not, nor where such distribution should or should not take place. They made no such conditions. Wherever they got the opportunity, the members of the Panchatattva distributed love of Godhead. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, here is an authoritative statement that in distributing love of Godhead, one should not consider whether the recipients are Europeans, Americans, Hindus, Muslims, etc. The Krishna consciousness movement should be spread wherever possible, and one should accept those who thus become Vaishnavas as being greater than the Brahmanas, Hindus, or Indians. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desired that his name be spread in each and every town and village on the surface of the globe. Therefore, when the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is spread all over the world, should those who embrace it not be accepted as Vaishnavas, Brahmanas, and Sannyasis? So that's the whole principle behind this, that the opportunity to take to Krishna consciousness is available to everyone. And then regardless of anyone's background, as soon as one takes shelter of Krishna consciousness, then technically one is even above the Brahman, which is the highest position in the Varnashram Dharma, in the Varna Dharma. And this is clearly stated by Prahlad Maharaj in one of the very first verses in his prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev in the 9th chapter of 7th canto, where he says that if a Brahman has all 12 of the Brahminical qualifications, as they are stated in the book called Sanat Sujata, but is not a devotee and is averse to the lotus feet of the Lord, he's certainly lower than a devotee who is a dog eater, that is by birth, by parentage, by background, whatever, but who has dedicated everything, mind, words, activities, wealth, and life to the Supreme Lord. Such a devotee is better than such a Brahman because the devotee can purify his whole family, whereas the so-called Brahman in a position of false prestige cannot purify even himself. So the superlative power of devotional service, the superlative mercy of Krishna and the superlative potency of devotional service can uplift anyone from any condition to the highest platform. And Prabhupada mentions this verse over here, the Nectar of Instruction, very famous verse. Prabhupada says here, there's no bodily disqualification of a devotee, just as there is no qualitative difference between the Ganges water and the unfilthy drain water when they are amalgamated. So this is the Nectar of Instruction verse where Rupa Goswami says, Drishteh svabhava janiter vapushascha dosher na prakritatva meha bhakta janasya pashyet. Gangam Bhasam Nakhalu Bud Budapena Panger Brahma Dravatvam Apagachati Nira Dharmai. Being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee as having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, a diseased body, or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. And so, of course, this also guides us in our outlook and mentality in terms of how we need to view other devotees. And not doing so results in Vaishnava aparadh, and it's highly displeasing to Krishna. So it's something to always keep in mind that, yeah, no material disqualifications, no apparent bodily disqualifications, nothing can mar the position of a devotee, because a devotee is on the transcendental platform. And seeking, both in terms of seeking shelter of Krishna, there is no material disqualification that can hold one back. And once one has taken shelter of Krishna, then there is no material disqualification that is taken into consideration when regarding the status of that person as a devotee. And just a brief point regarding 16,108 queens. Is this an exaggeration? Some people, I mean, they do find it mind-boggling. Reading these descriptions, some feel that it should be taken in a symbolic form or a figurative form. Maybe it's not literally 16,108. How could there be so many people? And then it is described that each queen had her own palace. So just how big was the city of Dwarka anyways? If, you know, this is just 16,108 palaces of the king's queens. And then there are other family members, and then there are the other citizens of the city. Just how big was Dwarka anyway? How does this all work out? And so, yeah, Prabhupada makes it very clear. This is literal truth. It's not a figurative thing. It's not a symbolic thing. Krishna literally has 16,108 queens. And Prabhupada, in fact, makes a point that actually this is just a small sample of Krishna's potency. Prabhupada writes in this purport of Bhagavatam 1:11:31 that unbelievers become astonished to learn that Lord Krishna married more than 16,000 queens, because they think of Lord Krishna as one of them and measure the potency of the Lord by their own limited potency. One should know, therefore, that the Lord is never on the level of the living beings, who are but expansions of his marginal potency, and one should never equate the potent and the potency, although there is very little difference of quality between the potent and the potency. The queens were also expansions of his internal potency, and thus the potent and his potencies are perpetually exchanging transcendental humors, known as the pastimes of the Lord. And then Prabhupada goes on to say that one should not therefore become astonished to learn that the Lord married so many wives. On the contrary, one should affirm that even if the Lord marries 16,000 million wives, he is not completely manifesting his unlimited and inexhaustible potency. And actually, we see that in the Brahma Samhita. That's what Lord Brahma describes, right? Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Sambrahma Sevimanam. In the spiritual world, Krishna is served by thousands of millions of goddesses of fortune. So yeah, as Prabhupada says, even if the Lord marries 16,000 million wives, he's not completely manifesting his unlimited and inexhaustible potency. He married only 16,000 wives and entered in each and every one of the different palaces, just to impress in the history of the human beings on the surface of the earth that the Lord is never equal to or less than any human being, however powerful he may be. No one, therefore, is equal to or greater than the Lord. The Lord is always great in all respects. God is great is eternal truth. So that's Prabhupada's response to this, that the only reason why we find such descriptions astonishing is because we try to look at it from our perspective, which is extremely limited, and therefore it seems unbelievable. But when we recognize that this is God that we are talking about, and that God is unlimited, And for the unlimited, then there is no such thing as too much or too many or impossible. Then it fits logical thinking entirely. It's God, and so it's no surprise if he marries 16,108 queens. And leading to our concluding point, which is basically the essence of these verses, is that Krishna is the best everything: master, friend, son, husband, lover. As Prabhupada describes here in the purport, that the Lord accepted all these queens as his wives, and thus their lives became glorified. And such auspicious glorification was still more glorified when the Lord played with them as their most devoted husband. Elsewhere in the Krishna book, it's often described that Krishna acted as a completely devoted, handpicked husband to his wives. And it says in the verse here that their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. And one of the examples of this is mentioned by Prabhupada of the Parijat tree, which Krishna brought from heaven and implanted at the palace of Satyabhama. So as the husband of so many wives, he pleased them all with presentations, even at a costly endeavor. If therefore anyone desires the Lord to become one's husband, the Lord fulfills such desires in full. So basically, the most perfect relationship that we can envision in any of the rasas, that is reposed in Krishna. And so Prabhupada writes, this is a beautiful excerpt from 1:11:39 purport, where Prabhupada says, the Lord exchanges transcendental relations in 5 ways: as proprietor, master, friend, son, and lover. And in each of these pastimes, he plays fully by the potency of Yoga Maya, the internal potency. He played exactly like an equal friend with the cowherd boys, or even with friends like Arjuna. He plays exactly like a son in the presence of Yashoda Mata. He plays exactly like a lover in the presence of the cowherd damsels, and he plays exactly like a husband in the presence of the queens of Dwarka. Such devotees of the Lord never think of the Lord as the supreme, but think of him exactly as a common friend, a pet son, or a lover or husband very much dear to heart and soul. When the Lord descends, he does so along with his entourage to display a complete picture of the transcendental world, where pure love and devotion for the Lord prevail without any mundane tinge. So not only is this the natural way that Krishna deals with his devotees in the spiritual world, but then from time to time he comes here to display a complete picture of that same transcendental world, to give us a glimpse of what life is like with him in the spiritual world, and to tell us that what we are looking for and what our heart is hankering for can truly be found only in a relationship with Krishna himself. And basically, it is this knowledge which enables a devotee, which enables an individual to renounce the lower attractions, the lower temptations of the material nature, because there is this thing which is so much higher, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Param Drishtva Nivartate. The only way one can give up something lower is when we have a higher attraction, a better thing to look forward to. And that is why the Mayavad, or the impersonalist conception of renunciation, is temporary. It does not last long, and it is very difficult also to achieve. That is why Krishna says in the Gita, Kleshodhikataras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam, in the 12th chapter, that is very troublesome, because you're giving up something, but there is no higher substitute. There is nothing higher that you can look forward to, because of which the lower thing becomes meaningless and distasteful. So that is what is available when one practices devotional service, and that is what is available in our Bhakti Shastras, where like in the Bhagavatam and the Gita and our previous Acharyas' works, we are given a full picture of what life is like with Krishna in the spiritual world. And that automatically detaches a devotee from the lower attractions of material energy. This is another really beautiful excerpt from Prabhupada's purport to 4.8.22. This is when Dhruv Maharaj goes crying to his mother after having been insulted by his stepmother. And Prabhupada writes that Queen Suniti advised her son that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Prityavatsala, which indicates that he's very kind to his devotees. She said, "You came to me crying, having been insulted by your stepmother, but I am unable to do any good for you. But Krishna is so kind to his devotees that if you go to him, then the combined kindness of millions of mothers like me will be surpassed by his affectionate and tender dealings. When everyone else fails to mitigate one's misery, Krishna is able to help the devotee. So yeah, the best shelter, the best mother, the best father, the best lover, the best everything that one needs, one will find that in Krishna. And this, as Prabhupada would say, this is the mission of our movement also. That is why it is the most glorious movement in the world, because what it is giving to humanity is something that just cannot be achieved by any other process. As Prabhupada says, there's a lecture, December 8, 1974. Prabhupada says, so this movement is teaching everyone always to be Krishna conscious, to become first-class yogi and take Krishna as everything. Priya, Sutta, Sakha, Guru, everything. That is called Bhakta. If you want a son, all right, Krishna is prepared to become your son. If you want a lover, all right, Krishna is prepared to become your lover. If you want a friend, Krishna is prepared to become your friend. Everything, Krishna is prepared. And that relationship is going on in this material world. Anyway, we are attempting to have these relationships here. I love somebody as my son, I love somebody as my friend, I love somebody as my lover, I love somebody as my father. Or in this relationship, Sakyam, there is the mellows, the Sakya Bhav, Vatsalya, Madhuryam, loving platform, loving propensities. Krishna is prepared. Anything that one's heart desires for, that relationship is available in its perfect, most pristine, original form with Krishna. And the Prabhupada says, there's a garden conversation in 1974. Our philosophy is come here, play with Krishna as cowherd boy. Come here, dance with Krishna as gopi. Come here, accept Krishna as your son. Krishna will accept you as his mother. There will always be two, and enjoy anyway, even as enemy, demon displaying part of enemy, Krishna killing, that is also pastime too. That is also enjoyment. Just like sometimes we fight friend to friend, and to enjoy life, because fighting is enjoyment. To become enemy of Krishna purposefully and to fight with him, that is giving pleasure to Krishna. So anyway, you can deal with Krishna and enjoy transcendental pleasure, either as enemy or as friend, or as son, or as lover, as master, as a servant, anyway. Srila Prabhupada Garden Conversation, September 11, 1974. So we'll conclude with this quote, and over to you, Vatji. I'll stop sharing.
No problem. Thank you so much for this very informative class. Thank you for sharing many, many quotes and pastimes about how the Lord is always protecting his devotees and how Srila Prabhupada is always reminding us about the supremacy of the Lord. So thank you so much. Would like to ask devotees if any questions, any comments. Yes, Raj Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, all glories to you. I'd like to ask a question about these so-called fallen girls. Now, many of us endeavor so hard, day after day, week after week, month after month. We're endeavoring with rising early and praying and worshipping and chanting and reading and studying and getting the right association and hearing from elevated souls and listening to them carefully and following their advice and instructions, getting the right association, avoiding the wrong things. Yet these fallen ladies, just by the intensity of their sincerity, that achieved Krishna so quickly. So it feels like, what are we doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? How can I get that intensity?
Okay. Well, I think, thank you for the question, Prabhuji. I think like if we go back to the previous verse, then I'll just share the screen. So today we did 29 and 30. If we go to verse 28, which was the verse that was discussed yesterday, this is just one part of the answer. Of course, we get a glimpse that perhaps it was not as quick as it apparently may seem, because here in the translation it says, "Oh friends, just think of his wives whose hands he has accepted, how they must have undergone vows, baths, fire sacrifices, and perfect worship of the Lord of the universe to constantly relish now the nectar from his lips by kissing. The damsels of Rajbhumi would often faint just by expecting such favors. So here there is a mention of that, yeah, this was basically a culmination of many, many vows and sacred baths and fire sacrifices and archana of the Lord. So even though here it seems as if this is just one lifetime and they seem to have attained perfection so quickly, perhaps this is not the full story. There is a long process spanning maybe many lifetimes of these souls who have now achieved this perfection. And then also there are these different categories of Krishna's consorts and the gopis also, as we see in the Rasa dance, we have these Shrutichari gopis, the Munichari gopis. There were different groups of gopis. And so, for instance, the Munichari gopis, they were actually the sages of Dandakaranya, who had been performing austerities for who knows how many years or maybe lifetimes. And then when they have darshan of Lord Ram in the Dandakaranya forest, and at that time they aspire to have a conjugal relationship with the Lord. And because Lord Ram had taken the Ek Patni Vrata, so he fulfills their desire in next time when he comes down as Krishna himself. So yeah, and so those are, so then they incarnate as gopis in Vrindavan, and those were the Munichari gopis. Similarly, the Shrutichari gopis, they were the personified Vedas. So in many cases, yes, these are culminations from a process of sadhana spanning many, many lifetimes, often. So this is one thing. And the other thing is that, like, in one sense, even though sometimes it appears that we are not making that much progress, but just the very fact that even after all these years, we are able to stick to these things, that we are able to chant that same mantra over and over again, like day after day, month after month, year after year. That just in itself is a remarkable achievement. Like, that is not possible with any mundane sound. That is not possible with just with any activity. And people all over the world, they've spent years, maybe decades, doing the same sadhana, chanting the same mantras, doing the same puja, reading the same scriptures, and each time getting some relish out of it, experiencing some pleasure. Because we have to admit, even though our consciousness keeps flickering and fluctuating, and sometimes we are into it, sometimes we are not into it, but still there is, even after all these years, we are still sticking to it, and there's still some pleasure, some relish that we are getting out of it, due to which we are hanging in here. And so that in itself proves that yes, the process is working. Yeah. There's also like this verse. If you just give me one moment, I'll read to you another verse where it says, okay, yeah, this is 10, 12, 7 to 11. Okay, maybe I'll just share the screen and read this verse as well. 10. Okay, 10, 12. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 12, verses 7 to 11. Yeah. So this is a description of Krishna with all his cowherd boyfriends. And it's describing all their dealings. All the cowherd boys were differently engaged. Some blew their flutes, some blew bugles, some attracted young monkeys in the trees, some jumped into the trees, etc., how they were playing with Krishna. In this way, then it says here, from here, in this way, all the cowherd boys used to play with Krishna, who is the source of the Brahman effulgence for Gyanis, desiring to merge into that effulgence, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead for devotees who have accepted eternal servitorship, and who for ordinary persons is but another ordinary child. The cowherd boys, and this is the phrase that is operational here, having accumulated the results of pious activities for many lives, were able to associate in this way with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this Sanskrit word that is used here is Krita Punya Punjaha. Krita Punya Punja, accumulated results of spiritual piety for many lives. They were able to associate in this way. How can one explain their great fortune? So yeah, in many cases, it really is a long process. But actually, we are the lucky ones in one sense, because in Kali Yuga, this process has been expedited and shortened and condensed for us remarkably by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. So yeah, these are just some
Thank
thoughts.
you very much. Thank you very much. Very helpful.
You always ask such
Thank you.
deep questions, Raj Prabhu. Thank you so much. That makes me want to go deeper into my own Krishna consciousness. So thank you for asking that question. Such a wonderful, food for thought provoking question. Thank you. Namrata Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to dear Guru Maharaj, and all glories to your wonderful service.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Very wonderful, powerful, power-packed class. The previous answer which you gave to Raj Prabhu opened a lot of doors and questioned a lot of, answered a lot of questions. So thank you for that. So my question was, there are a lot of content written by our acharyas for which we are not qualified right away to read them.
Sorry, yeah.
We need some qualification. How do we understand that we are qualified to relish that nectar or
Okay, yeah, the voice was breaking a little bit at my end. You're saying, how do we understand whether we are qualified or not? Is that the question?
yes.
Okay. Okay, well, I suppose one thing that just comes to mind instantly is that first we do go through all of Prabhupada's books, like from start to finish. That should be at least one primary goal that we have, not that before we have finished Prabhupada's works, we start delving into other works. And then I guess it's also a matter of basically discussing with our mentors, consulting with our, maybe Shiksha Gurus, maybe our Diksha Guru, if it's possible, and just discussing with devotees. And then in the association of devotees, it kind of becomes clearer what we can read, what we cannot. And also there is less possibility of us misunderstanding things when these things are discussed in the company of senior devotees. So they automatically kind of clarify things and set benchmarks for us that keep us safe. So that would be one easy way, that just act in consultation with and under the guidance of other senior devotees and mentors in this regard. And maybe like make our entry into these works by hearing these works explained by them, rather than just reading them ourselves. If we, even if we choose a book, then if there are classes by senior devotees on that book, then that is a better way, because that will clarify our misunderstandings. Like even in the Bhagavatam, we see this playing out, like Shukdev Goswami, when he's describing Krishna's dealings with the gopis and the rasa dance. And Parikshit Maharaj, he senses that this audience has all kinds of people. Some of them are not exactly on that qualification where they can understand these topics in the right spirit. And therefore, because we have such a superlatively qualified speaker and listener in the context of Bhagavatam, so Parikshit Maharaj, sensing the spirit of the audience, he poses questions to Shukdev Goswami, which are not really his questions, but he wants to clarify certain things for the other members of the audience regarding Krishna's dealings with the gopis. And that elicits responses from Shukadev Goswami, clarifying or refuting misconceptions that are often, that people often hold about Krishna's dealings with the gopis. So in that way, because there were these two highly qualified and mature devotees who were discussing this, so the listeners were automatically able to receive this esoteric knowledge in the right spirit. So that helps as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Radhika.
Thank you, Namrata. Nice question. When you, let me ask everyone else if there are any questions. Any questions from devotees, any thoughts that's coming to your mind, reflection, clarification, please do raise your hand so that we can call on the order of the devotees who would like to ask their question. As Namrata was asking about a question, if you allow me, Mother Gopika, to share a couple of thoughts. When she asked, how can we, I think you mentioned the word mercy, right, in your question, Namrata. How, I remember a comment or a question asked about that many years ago by a few devotees and few sannyasis. And one answer that we got was, we're actually not qualified. It's just pure mercy. We're actually not qualified at all. It's just pure mercy. And I was corrected actually one time when a devotee asked a question from another spiritual master. And I used the word qualified and I was corrected. They said, none of us are qualified. It's just by the mercy. And you know, and then this person used the example, you know, like how when we go to college, right? Nowadays, we see so many young people, you know, they have to be qualified to enter into the university, but they have to apply to so many universities just to get their foot in, not just one university. That's also by the mercy of the Lord, you know. And so sometimes when, you know, like for many high school students, at least in America, I said that I don't know about any other country, probably is any other country, I don't know, that as soon as they're in high school, you know, they will shoot for the Ivy League schools. I got to go to Carnegie, I got to go to UPenn, I got to go to this, I got to go to Johns Hopkins. And they apply to all the schools, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and then they end up going to Penn State. Now, is that a bummer? No, it's not. It's mercy of the Lord. Where we're supposed to go, the Lord decides that, you know. And then I remember that this answer was given is the mercy comes from the spiritual master. Purely from the spiritual master. Purely from the spiritual master. And it's only by the mercy of the spiritual master that we can even be able to chant the rounds, you know. We can even read and understand Srila Prabhupada's books. We can do some service, you know. We can do so many things. And sometimes we think that without the guru, we can go straight to Krishna. No, like we cannot even go to the president of the country's president, what to speak of the mayor. Right? Or what to speak of the town council member. So it's purely by the mercy. And I always humbly request devotees is whenever we recite the Sri Guru Vandana prayers, read the English translation and memorize it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Because the English translation really gets to the core of the heart. It really does. One of my favorite verses in the old ISKCON days, I don't know now, but when I joined 30 years ago, we were actually forced. I shouldn't use the word force. It was part of the culture where that we have to recite it in English. It's not just the Sanskrit. And one of my favorite verses in Sri Guru Vandana prayers is, he opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. Beautiful. Like when we recite that in English, we got the answer. Yes, we just got the answer. Only by the mercy of the spiritual master. And the devotees, absolutely. Because if we think, right, how was it that ISKCON got so many devotees? They got it from someone else. It's not like they walked into the door directly, you know, they got it from someone else. And then that person got it from someone else. All the mercy of the Lord. It's not like they just walked in, oh, I just came because I felt like coming to your temple. No, you heard about us from somewhere. That's mercy. Devotees are out there putting their lifelines, you know, putting their life on the front line and sharing the mercy of the Lord. And they're coming in all by the mercy of the devotees, purely mercy. Purely mercy. That's my humble realization. Purely by mercies, by the devotees of the Lord and by the Guru. Only then can we be saved. That's why devotees are referred to as Kalpavriksha trees. They are desire trees for us. We pray to them and ask them, please help me to progress. I need you. I cannot do it on my own. Absolutely. I hope that helped, Namrata.
Yes, totally it does. And yes, I remember me praying because I genuinely feel, I mean, at more I read, more I feel that I am not at all qualified, and I keep praying, unless you lift me up, my guru, my Goranga, unless you lift me up, it's practically not possible for me at all to get out of this contamination. So yes, this reminds me, recalls what I feel, what I realize. So thank you for adding to that.
Thank
Hare
you for
Krishna.
allowing me to share a little bit.
It was
Thank you,
helpful.
Gopika
Very
Mataji, for allowing me to share something.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing your realizations, Mataji. It was very good to hear those.
I still get beaten up, believe it or not, because I need the mercy. I do. Yes, Raj Prabhu, go ahead with the question.
Actually, it's just a comment because I feel that you also gave an extra dimension to the question, to the answer to my question, in that all this endeavor that we're always doing, we have to make sure that it's always totally aligned with the Guru's instructions and advice. Otherwise, we could be endeavoring off our own backs, and that won't be so valuable.
Beautiful realization, Prabhu. Absolutely. Yeah. As you were speaking, I was reminded of a course that I took with Anuttama Prabhu, ISKCON Communications and ISKCON Leadership course a few years ago. And the first page of the handbook and the first instruction is to be aligned with Srila Prabhupada's teachings. I was like, okay. Rubbed it right through. That was the first line. And I wouldn't expect that in a leadership. You expect something from, Stephen Covey or, John Maxwell or something. He put right on top. Srila Prabhupada, to be aligned. That's the word that you use, to be aligned with Srila Prabhupada's teaching. So thank you for reminding me too, Prabhu. Thank you. Very nice. Any other questions from devotees? Any thoughts, any reflections, any realizations from this amazing topic? What was coming to my mind? And this was and I'm so happy, Gopika Mataji, that you shared a lot of pastimes, quotes actually about how Krishna saved his devotees. Beautiful quotes, because I was remembering as you were reading it, how Krishna, in all those quotes, he was really showing the importance of protecting women. How he always protected women, no matter what, no matter where, no matter what it was. He was always protecting women, and how he's teaching us the importance of protecting women, because without protecting women, that house or that home is like a graveyard. He had said, So I was really reflecting on that, how Krishna is always protecting his devotees, right? He's coming to destroy the miscreants, and is always protecting his devotees, always protecting his devotees. And then I think you also said that we got the best formula by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, how he made it so simple. We don't have to do any austerities. We don't have to do millions of years of deity worship. We just got to chant the holy name. We don't have to do this tapasya and that tapasya. We just got to chant. I'm like, Hare Krishna, why is this mind such a rest? Got us to accept that, So that was a very nice reminder for me that Srila Prabhupada's mercy, he made it so simple, so sweet, just to chant the holy name and really get into the holy name, and to really get purified by the holy name and really get deeper. In fact, I have to say, Candramauli Swami actually said this comment many years ago, and I think it was in 94, 95 when I first met him, 93, somewhere around there. He says, even if you cannot chant attentively, chant mechanically anyway. Just chant mechanically, it will come. He says, even if you don't have the taste, just chant anyway. One day it will come. And believe me, it was like pulling teeth for me. I'm like, okay, Krishna, I gotta chant, but I like it, you know. But he said, just chant anyway. And later on, slowly, the ruchi will come. The importance of my God, you know, yeah, it'll come. So that was one instructions that I remember from His Holiness Candramauli Swami. Just chant, and slowly it'll come. Just like the gopis, as you said, what's taking me so long? We just got to stay on the process. In fact, I think there was one pastime, one devotee was telling Prabhupada, and Prabhupada says, you know, was it another sannyasi? I forgot. We are sitting in the transcendental boat, and we're holding on to the edges of the boat, and we are in this rocky sea. And as long as we are holding on to this transcendental boat, we can't fall off the boat, no matter how rocky the waves are. Just hang on to that boat. And that always stayed with me. So I wanted to share that little story too. I hope that helped, Raj Prabhu. Any other questions from devotees? Any thoughts, any reflections, anything? If there isn't, thank you, Gopika Mataji, for such a wonderful food for thought-provoking class with so many wonderful quotes, so many pastimes, making us really meditate on these pastimes, you know, to make us really go deeper and to really get into the Shastra. And thank you to all the devotees for asking wonderful questions. That has helped me too, actually. Especially from Raj Prabhu's and Namrata Mataji's question. It really made me reflect on my own Krishna consciousness. And we thank all the devotees for joining us. Vanchakraptibhyascha kripasindobheva patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Candramauli Swami ki jai. Have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Hari Hari Bol.
Mataji, Hare
I'm
Krishna.
good.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much. I'm good.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.